Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today we're going to be ranking all 15 cars from the contract DLC in Grand Theft Auto Online. Now I can hear you saying, HarmNone, aren't there 16 cars that came out with the contract DLC? Yes, you're right technically. Unfortunately, the 16th car is not actually purchasable. It is of course the Yuga. I think it's the Yuga Custom actually. You can't actually buy it in online, so we can't really rank it. That's unfortunate, but at the same time it's fine, because if I was going to rank it out of 16 cars, it would be in 16th place. So now if you guys have never seen one of my ranking videos before where I go in and rank a bunch of cars from a particular DLC, then I have some information that will be relevant to you. This list is 100% factual and cannot be argued with. Everything that I say is absolute fact, irrefutable. If you disagree, you're simply wrong, and you should exit off the video. Now these cars are getting ranked based on how useful they are, so that could be a combination of having armor and Imani tech, which is pretty useful, and also being really fast or really good at doing a particular task, which, I mean, they're cars, so the particular task is driving. Some cars are good, some cars are bad, some slow and some fast, and some that are dreadful in every single way. With that being said, we're going to start off with the most dreadful and abhorrent of all of the cars that were added with the contract DLC. Alright guys, at number 15, we have the I-Wagon. This car, honestly, I'm just angry about it because we could have had an SVJ, a Durango Hellcat, or a new G-Wagon, literally anything else. But we got this, so thanks, thank you Rockstar. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I sold one of these earlier when I went to record this video for the first time, and I didn't really realize that I deleted the footage, and so I had to buy a second I-Wagon just for this video, just to show it off quickly, and then to sell it immediately again. So I really hope you guys enjoyed seeing me lose $700,000 for nothing. Now I just want to say before we get any further into the video, I don't actually have a personal beef with any of these next few cars. The I-Wagon is a different story. I absolutely hate that thing. But the rest of the cars on this list, honestly, I like pretty much all of them. However, I do have to rank them. It is my job today. So some of them are going to be ranked higher than others, and it doesn't necessarily mean I hate the car. So I just want to put that out there, just in case anyone forgot. I'm right, you're wrong, if you disagree. Alright guys, next up, at number 14, we have the Comet S2 Cabrio. Now, the Comet S2 is a bad car in GTA these days, let's be honest. After the tuners, okay, as I was saying, after the tuners DLC, vehicles all got nerfed. The Comet S2 regular is not a very good car anymore. I mean, it kind of wasn't even before, but it had a pretty good top speed at least. Now, the Comet S2 Cabrio is, in my opinion, a very good looking car, honestly. And I do kind of enjoy this thing quite a bit. I think it's fantastic looking, it's got good acceleration, it has a decent top speed, it's not that great, but it's pretty good. But the one thing that this car does absolutely horribly is, well, turn. The handling is absolutely awful. It kind of feels like you have McDonald's trays underneath the back two wheels, or at least maybe under one of the back wheels. The back end on this thing just loves to slide out for no reason, and it's quite annoying. It's not my favorite car ever to drive. However, I do really like the look of it, but unfortunately I can't really rank it any higher than number 14, because all the cars ahead of this thing, well, they kind of handle better, and they're a lot more functional. So unfortunately, the Comet S2 Cabrio is sitting here at number 14. Let's move on though to number 13. Alright guys, next up at number 13, we of course have the Gallivanter Baller ST. Now I want to stress this to the max. I really like this SUV. I have to rank it this high on the list because, well, it's not that great at anything. I mean, it's a pretty good SUV in the game. It's actually quite fast. I believe it's the 6th fastest SUV in the entire game, so that is pretty darn good. And I think it's one of the best looking SUVs in the entire game. I would put this thing in S tier, right alongside the Rebla GTS and the Tauros, in my opinion at least. I think it's an absolutely fantastic vehicle. It's pretty quick in a straight line, it actually has pretty decent handling, and it has a decent top speed. Really, there's nothing to dislike about this car, and the only reason it's this high on the list is just because some of the cars ahead of it are just a little bit better or a little bit more useful, which is unfortunate because, like I said, I really do love this thing. However, it's just not quite top 10 material. So here we have it at number 13. Still a very solid car and kind of a cheaper car as well. I believe this thing goes for around $800,000, which is not a bad price. Overall, I would definitely recommend picking up a Gallivanter Baller ST. With that being said, let's move on to number 12. Alright, this one's gonna anger some people. At number 12, we have the overflowed Xeno. Now the Xeno is this high on the list because of a few things. In my opinion, it is not the best looking car. I do think that it looks pretty good. It's not the best looking car ever. Another problem with the Xeno is, well, just so sorry, that was literally unplanned. The handling is not very great. When this thing first came out, it also had a big problem with the mirrors, and I'm not sure that it's been fixed yet or not, but the mirrors used to make this car undrivable, which, not that I'm still counting that, but that was a big problem with this car when it first came out. Another problem is the price. This thing costs $2.8 million, and it's nowhere near the top 10 fastest supercars in the game, and the Krieger costs $2.8 million as well. I think you can probably tell where I'm going with this. The Xeno is not worth its price, and it's got a few problems. I mean, it's just not the fastest car, it's not the best looking car ever, and the handling's not very good. It's just not very good. It's the second fastest car from the DLC, but that's not saying a whole lot, let's just say that. Overall, the Xeno is a pretty good way to waste $2.8 million in my opinion. It's really not that good of a car, and I'm sorry if I've offended you, but it's just not great. The only reason it's ahead of some of these other cars is because it's just faster than they are. It's a little bit more useful at driving around, at least. Unfortunate to rank it this high. I was really hoping this car was going to be better. Here we are. Let's move on to number 11. Alright guys, next up at number 11, we have the Patriot Mil-Spec. Now I can already hear you screaming and crying. I'm sorry. I didn't want to have to put this thing so high, but there are just so many good cars in this update that this thing is going to have to be pretty high up. And I want to say, before you start writing your hate comment, I really do like the Patriot Mil-Spec. However, this car does have its few problems. The main problem being with this vehicle is that it feels like there is a 12-ton nuclear bomb strapped to the roof on top of a ladder that's bolted to the roof. It feels very top heavy, this car, and as a result, the handling is absolutely abysmal. And I know that this is not a sports car or a supercar. It's not exactly supposed to have great handling. However, I have experienced this thing when I've been PvPing in Grand Theft Auto Online, and it has let me down a few times when I've been trying to chase somebody, which I know, again, that's not really what this thing's meant for. It has let me down a few times. It's still a great vehicle, and you should still own one, in my opinion. However, I have to be realistic. The Patriot Mil-Spec is just not the greatest vehicle in general. It's pretty slow. It has pretty abysmal handling. It is quite good off-road, I will say. However, it is also a very kind of large vehicle, or a very wide vehicle, I will say. So maneuvering it in tighter areas isn't exactly very easy, and the handling that's, let's just say, subpar doesn't help with that either. Overall, the Patriot Mil-Spec is still a great vehicle. I do recommend buying it, but there are some better vehicles that came out with the contract DLC that do virtually the exact same thing that the Patriot Mil-Spec does, kind of better, unfortunately. So anyway guys, that's it for the Patriot Mil-Spec at number 11. Let's move on to number 10. Alright guys, next up at number 10 we have the Pfister Astron. Now the Astron is ranked this high because it is the third fastest SUV in the entire game. Now if this thing had an armor upgrade or Imani tech options, it would be ranked considerably higher. However, I do feel like 10th place is pretty good for the Astron. I feel like it's a pretty good fit. Overall, this SUV is lightning quick, and it also has very, very good handling, especially for an SUV. When you consider that this thing is an SUV, it is pretty mind-blowing how crazy good the handling is. Now again, it's not the fastest vehicle ever, but in the SUVs category, it is pretty darn good. I think it's a pretty great looking SUV as well, heavily based off of the Porsche Macan Turbo or the Macan GTS in real life. I think that Rockstar did a pretty fantastic job with the copyright infringement on this car. Very good job. Very solid car. I would definitely recommend picking up an Astron, however, not more than some of the other cars further up on the list. So anyway guys, let's get into number 9. Alright guys, next up at number 9 we have the Enis Deity. Now the reason that this thing is ranked higher than the Pfister Astron and some of the other cars is because it's a little bit faster, and it also has Imani tech. Now the reason that this thing is ranked ahead of the Pfister Astron is because it has Imani tech upgrades. Although the Astron is a much faster vehicle, I do feel like the Enis Deity does have its purpose. Obviously, this thing is upgradable with Imani tech options, so you can put armor on it, an oil slick dropper, remote control, or a missile lock-on jammer. All of these options definitely help out with this thing, and of course it is also equipable with machine guns, which is very, very nice. Now the machine guns on these are very, very good. All of the vehicles added with the contract DLC that have machine guns share the same machine guns as the Enis Deity, so they're quite good. You can absolutely fry cars and their occupants alive with these things. They're very, very good. Now the Enis Deity, like I mentioned, is slower than the Fister Astron, but like I said, it also does have Imani tech, so it technically, in my opinion, is a little bit better of a vehicle than the Astron. I personally think that the Astron looks a little bit better than the Deity. The Deity looks really, really good from the front and from the side angles, but from the back, it's a little bit lackluster in my opinion. Not the best looking car ever, but it is pretty darn useful, I must say. Anyway guys, that is it for the Enis Deity. Let's move on to number 8. Alright guys, at number 8, it honestly pains me to put this here. We have the Nagasaki Shinobi. Now the Shinobi is the most expensive bike in all of Grand Theft Auto Online, coming in at $2,480,000, which is absolutely absurd. However, the reason that the Shinobi is ranked this high on the list is because it is the 4th fastest motorcycle in all of Grand Theft Auto Online, which I do feel like is quite a feat. Now, I'm personally not very into bikes in GTA, so you can probably see why it pains me to put this bike so high on this list ahead of so many great vehicles. However, it is deserving of this spot, I do feel like. The Shinobi has very, very good handling, it has very decent acceleration as well, and it has a nearly infinite wheelie, which also helps with acceleration. Being that it is a bike, it also can kill you faster than you can blink, and it's just, yeah, and it's $2.5 million and die that easily. We have the Shinobi at number 8. Let's move on. Alright guys, next up at number 7, we have the brand new Granger 3600 LX. This thing has full Imani tech options, which makes it very, very good. The reason it is this high on the list more than anything is because it is a Granger. We finally have a new Granger in Grand Theft Auto Online, which I think is a long overdue upgrade to the game. Now unfortunately, the 3600 LX is actually slower than the original Granger in the game, even when this thing is fully upgraded, which I know is less than ideal. Now the Granger 3600 LX is the one vehicle on this list that I have kind of given it an exception to as far as the speed rule, and I think that being that it is a Granger and that we haven't had a new Granger since 2013 when the game initially released, that it was deserving of being this high on the list for old time's sake. Now keep in mind, I'm correct. If you disagree with me on that, you're wrong. But I honestly do feel like the Granger is a very, very good vehicle from the contract DLC. I definitely think it's a must own. And another part of the reason why this thing is ranked so high is because it only costs $1 million. Now I have heard that I have the trade price unlocked, which I don't even know how I unlocked it, but I do think that I have the trade price. I think regularly this thing is more like $1.4 million, but still, it is very, very cheap. It's a very good vehicle. And of course, it has Imani tech options. Overall, the Granger 3600 LX is a must-own in Grand Theft Auto Online, in my opinion. You guys should definitely pick one of these things up if you don't have one already. Although, I kind of doubt that you don't have one of these because it is pretty much a staple vehicle these days, in my opinion. Anyway guys, that is it for number 7. Let's move on to number 6. Alright guys, next up at number 6, we of course have the Enis Jubilee. Now the Enis Jubilee is a car that I feel like the community has been wanting for quite some time within GTA Online. Obviously being based off of the Rolls-Royce Cullinan in real life, which is a sick SUV in my opinion at least. Now within GTA, it is the 5th fastest SUV in the entire game, and of course, as you guys can see by the sides of it and by the machine guns on the front, it is a vehicle that is equipable with Imani tech, which of course bumps it up significantly in the ranking. Now honestly, the Jubilee in my opinion does handle really, really nicely. It has decent acceleration and it's got a pretty good top speed, and of course to top it all off, it does have Imani tech. It is a pretty solid SUV in my opinion. Having the machine guns and having the armor, as well as the ability to add the missile lock-on jammer, this thing is an underrated defensive vehicle in my opinion. Jubilee is also pretty good at off-roading, and it is relatively affordable, coming in at about $1.6 million. Overall, the Jubilee is definitely a vehicle that I recommend picking up. It is very, very good at what it does, and it looks good doing it. However, there is one thing that I must mention with the Enis Jubilee. The interior of this thing literally sucks. It's so bad. I don't know what Rockstar was thinking when they made the interior for this. It's one of the most luxurious cars in real life, and the interior is the same as the interior out of a Dundreary Landstalker, which is a vehicle you can steal off of the street. It's actually probably got the same interior as that Cavalcade up there. Less than ideal for sure with the interior. Would have really liked to see some more options for the interior, but that's what we got, guys, so there you have it. Let's move on to the 5th best car that was added with the contract DLC. Alright guys, next up at number 5, we of course have the Pegasi Ignis. Now the Ignis is the 6th fastest supercar in all of Grand Theft Auto Online. As I was saying, the Ignis is the 6th fastest supercar in all of Grand Theft Auto Online, which does earn it a pretty high position in this list. Now, out of the 3 supercars that were added with this DLC, the Ignis is by far the fastest. It's also 4-wheel drive, and in my opinion, well, factually, of course, but well, obviously, factually, the Ignis does have the best handling by far out of all 3 supercars that were added with the contract DLC. It also has the best top speed and the best acceleration out of the 3 as well. Overall, the Ignis is the most capable supercar that was added with the contract DLC, and I personally absolutely love this thing. It has great customization features, it sounds good, it looks great. There's really nothing wrong with the Ignis. If only this thing just had Imani tech, it would be the ultimate vehicle from this DLC. But unfortunately guys, it does not have Imani tech, so it is going to get a bit of a lower ranking than it potentially could. With that being said, being within the top 5 is pretty good, I have to say. Anyway guys, that is it for number 5 and the Pegasi Ignis. Let's move on to number 4. Alright guys, next up at number 4 we have the Lampadati Cinquemila, or the Cinquemila, depending on how you want to say it. Now this is one of my favorite cars from the DLC, and when it first came out I wasn't really a big fan of this car. It's actually jumped up quite a few positions since my last ranking video where I ranked the initial cars that came out with the contract DLC. Now, you may be saying, why is the Cinquemila this high on the list? It doesn't have Imani tech, and it may not be the best looking vehicle. The Cinquemila is here because it is the fastest sedan in Grand Theft Auto Online. Now, there's some debate whether this or the Shafter V12 are faster than each other. Shafter V12 on a track with long straightaways will be better than the Cinquemila. However, on a twistier circuit, the Cinquemila has much better handling than the Shafter V12, and it will beat it pretty much every single time. Another reason that the Cinquemila is this high on the list as well is because it sounds like this. Also, in my opinion, it is a pretty fantastic sedan. It can of course seat 4 players, being, well, that it's a sedan. And in my opinion, it's also pretty good looking from the front, and pretty much from every other angle too, but mainly from the front. Overall, the Cinquemila dominates the sedans category in Grand Theft Auto Online, which in my opinion gives it the right to be this high on the list. Now, I know some of you may not agree with that, but that's the whole thing, right? I'm right and you're wrong. Anyway guys, that is it for number 4 with the Lampadati Cinquemila. Let's move on to number 3. Alright guys, and at number 3 we of course have the Western Reaver. Now, again, I'm not a super huge fan of bikes in Grand Theft Auto Online, so it was a little bit challenging for me to rank this thing this high. It is definitely deserving of this position. Now, the Reaver, if you didn't know, has a special feature about it that was not necessarily intended to be a feature with this bike. It has an infinite wheelie, and its wheelie also causes a speed glitch, which allows the Reaver to go insanely fast. As you guys can see, it looks like my screen is vibrating right now, and it might as well be. The Reaver is extremely fast. Extremely fast. On motorcycle tracks with long straightaways, the Reaver will beat any other bike in the entire game, because it has semi-decent handling for when the corners come up, but on a straightaway it is completely uncatchable by the majority of motorcycles within Grand Theft Auto Online. The Reaver is absolutely insane, and in my opinion it is the best bike in Grand Theft Auto Online for racing, as long as the track is relatively straight or has a lot of long straightaways. If it's a very twisty circuit, then the Tron bike is of course going to be the best bike in the entire game. However, I definitely feel like the Reaver deserves to be here. It is such a fast bike, and it is honestly kind of a blast to drive. I would definitely recommend picking up a Reaver, although the only thing about this bike is that it does cost nearly $2 million, coming in at just over 1.9 million, which is pretty ridiculous in my opinion, but you do get a speed glitched bike, so yeah, I mean, you can't really complain too much, can you? Anyway guys, that's it for number 3. Let's move on to number 2. Alright guys, at number 2 we have the Dubachi Champion. Now the Dubachi Champion is nowhere near the fastest supercars in Grand Theft Auto Online. However, it is the second fastest vehicle with Imani tech in the entire game. So I felt like it is pretty deserving of being this high on the list. Now the Champion is not the greatest handling car ever, it doesn't have the greatest acceleration, doesn't have the greatest top speed, but it does have Imani tech, and it has pretty good handling, acceleration, and a semi-decent top speed. The Champion is equipable with machine guns, with armor, with a missile lock-on jammer, with a proximity oil slick mine dropper. Basically, it's got a lot of very good defensive features while being a very, very fast car. And in my opinion, a very good looking car as well. Now the Champion is a little bit more on the expensive side, however, it's not the most expensive vehicle in the game, and for all the special upgrades that it gets, I would say it is worth the price. Overall, the Champion, in my opinion, is definitely deserving of the number 2 slot on this list because it's just such a good car. However, the vehicle that is at number 1 is just ever so slightly better in pretty much every single way. Let's move on to the number 1 car from the Contract DLC in Grand Theft Auto Online. Alright guys, at number 1 we of course have the Bravado Buffalo STX. One of the most heavily requested cars by the community is of course a Dodge Charger Hellcat. And the Bravado Buffalo STX is, well, it is that. Either that or it's a Scat Pack, I'm not really sure honestly. I think it's more of a Hellcat, but I don't want to even get into that argument. Now, the Buffalo STX is at the number 1 spot for very, very many different reasons. The STX is the fastest muscle car around a track in the entire game. Now, before the Hellfire guys comment, no, the Hellfire's faster, because I get about 1 million of those comments on every single video I make regarding muscle cars in GTA Online. If you take the Hellfire on a circuit that has turns versus a STX, you will lose. If you say you won, the guy that you were racing against doesn't have thumbs, or you're lying. There's only 2 ways about it. Now secondly, the reason that this thing is at number 1 is because it is equipable with Imani tech. You can put armor on this thing, you can put machine guns on this thing as you guys can see, you can put an oil slick dropper, and of course you can either put remote control or the missile lock-on jammer. On top of that, the STX is of course a 4-door vehicle, and it is one of the fastest 4-door vehicles in the entire game. So just another reason why the STX is absolutely fantastic. It also has an absolute ton of customization. You can make this thing look absolutely bonkers, or you can make it look relatively subtle, kind of like mine, if you want to call mine subtle, I guess. So the STX is basically a winner on the racetrack, and it's of course a winner in free mode because oppressor guys cannot lock onto you and kill you extremely easily with their stupid flying broomstick. Overall, the STX is, in my opinion, the best car from the Contract DLC in Grand Theft Auto Online. Anyway guys, that is pretty much it for my ranking of all of the vehicles that came out with the Contract DLC in Grand Theft Auto Online. If you guys enjoyed this video, or if you learned something, a like is of course appreciated. Dislike if you didn't like the video, or if you didn't agree with my picks. Comment down below, let me know what you thought of my list. Obviously, if you disagree, you're wrong, but feel free to comment nonetheless. Subscribe if you guys are new, and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.